April 24th, 2020 was set to be a huge day for commercial aviation. On that date, Boeing and Embraer were expected to come to terms on a massive agreement in which Boeing would pay $4.2 billion to assume 80% control of Embraer's business. But April 24th came and went, and there was silence on all fronts. It was later revealed that Boeing had quietly backed out of the deal, and perhaps unsurprisingly, Embraer was pissed. The ensuing conflict has dragged on for months and is still awaiting a resolution. But as the finger pointing has intensified, many have lost sight of why this deal was so important in the first place. So why did Boeing want to purchase the Brazilian jetmaker, and why did the deal ultimately fall through? Let me explain. Real quick, YouTube is telling me that 85% of you guys who are watching this video still haven't subscribed. So go ahead and hit that button and bell to make sure that you don't miss any of the great videos that are coming soon. First, let's start with why Boeing wanted to acquire Embraer in the first place. A big misconception is that the deal was a direct response to the Airbus A220. If you're familiar with the A220, you'll know it's a brand new regional jet. And if you're familiar with the regional jet marketplace, you'll know that Boeing and Airbus have largely stayed out of it. For the most part, this space has been dominated by Canadian jetmaker Bombardier and Brazilian jetmaker Embraer. But in 2017, Airbus made a play into this segment by capitalizing on Bombardier's struggles. In that year, Airbus purchased a 50.01% stake in Bombardier's C-Series aircraft family, which would later become the A220. At the time, the C-Series had just entered into service, and while it boasted exceptional comfort and fuel savings, sales were slow. To make matters worse, Bombardier was also under the watchful eye of the US federal government after Boeing accused them of dumping, the illegal practice of selling aircraft well below their production cost in order to win customers. The C-Series needed help, and spotting a good deal, Airbus jumped in. Almost immediately, the European jetmaker was able to inject new life into the program. Their powerhouse sales team rebranded the jet the A220 and worked to substantially increase its backlog. Then, in February 2020, Airbus completely bought out Bombardier's stake in the program. All of a sudden, Airbus had its own regional jet. Now, Boeing didn't have a jet that could directly counter this new Airbus. So you'd be forgiven for thinking that they were looking for a direct challenger to the A220 when they struck up conversations to acquire Embraer. Embraer's situation mirrored Bombardier's. They had just developed their own regional jet, the E2, that was also struggling to sell. If a deal were to materialize, Boeing's massive sales and marketing resources could help Embraer move more units. At the same time, Boeing could retain parity in the market by acquiring an A220 competitor. While the E2 would have made a nice addition to Boeing's portfolio, the company actually saw it as a secondary objective. Industry sources have reported that Boeing's main objective was to secure Embraer's low-cost production processes. Designing and manufacturing aircrafts is a long and expensive process, and given the labor laws in Boeing's home state of Washington, building aircraft there ain't cheap. By leveraging Embraer's facilities and engineering resources in Brazil, Boeing could significantly lower production costs. Now, it might seem paradoxical to spend $4 billion in order to lower costs, but Boeing's used this tactic to great effect in the past. In the late 2000s, Boeing spent hundreds of millions of dollars to build a brand new 787 production facility in Charleston, South Carolina, a state where unionization rates are quite low. Now, I'm not going to get into the politics of US labor laws, but in general, non-unionized workers are paid less than those in a union. So, while Boeing invested a massive upfront cost to build this new South Carolina plant, its per aircraft production cost is lower there than it is in Everett. So now that we've set the stage, why did the deal fall through? Well, I don't think it comes as a surprise when I say that Boeing's had a bit of a rough year. the idea of engaging in a multi-billion-dollar acquisition starts to lose its appeal when you consider how much Boeing's been hurting from both the 737 MAX fiasco and the global pandemic. What's more, the mechanics of the deal were complicated by legislation that was passed in response to COVID-19. According to the CARES Act, the deal now violated dividend restrictions that were placed on Boeing. And renegotiating the deal to comply would be a costly and time-intensive endeavor. So it was clear that Boeing had a renewed interest in keeping that $4.2 billion. And the real conflict that's been brewing stems from the way that Boeing handled that situation. Embraer alleges that Boeing had wanted to cancel the deal months prior, but rather than doing so and paying an early termination penalty, Boeing decided to systematically mothball the deal until April 24th had passed, at which point the deal would expire. Embraer claims that this tactic has irreparably damaged its business. They contend that prior to negotiations with Boeing, several airlines were interested in the E2, but as soon as talks commenced, these customers decided to hold out until a deal went through. That way, they would be able to better maintain continuity with key personnel throughout the sales cycle, and could directly negotiate maintenance contracts with Boeing. However, thanks to Boeing's alleged stall tactics, those once promising deals were now unsalvageable. So, where do we go from here? Well, Boeing seems to have already moved on. The American jetmaker has already shifted focus towards other cost-cutting measures. Over the course of the last year, they've reduced their workforce by 10%. What's more, they're looking to consolidate the entirety of 787 assembly in Charleston. The same can't be said for Embraer. They most definitely have not moved on. Their primary focus moving forward will be to pursue legal action against Boeing, and their survival might depend on it. Again, Embraer's business was already struggling prior to talks, and it's set to suffer more with aviation demand now at an all-time low. Sure, the company still has some outstanding orders, and a respectable defense business. But unless they can walk away from litigation with a new cash infusion, their coffers might soon dry up. As a result, Embraer might not survive the pandemic at all. Now, let's pretend for a second that Boeing never backed out of the deal. If they didn't, I believe that they would have rebranded the E2 much like Airbus had done with the C series. If so, what do you think they should have called it? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you so much to my patrons for helping to make this video possible. If you want to join the Patreon community and help this channel grow, check out this link right here. And as always, if you learned something new today, leave a like and subscribe to keep learning. And until I see you again, don't forget to look up.